I want to make sure you guys know that there's that this it's for you guys. It's for you. It's for review. So later on, you can tell your drivers. So later on, you can tell your supervisors, your managers, anyone with safety responsibilities can go back and review these courses. So I am not an attorney and I am not a doctor. I do not practice any of the health arts or healing arts. Thank you, Anne. So just remember that, because we discuss sometimes during these sessions, we discuss things that have to do with, stretching or your back or the health of your neck or your spine, etc. So this is all for awareness purposes. You can do more research or call me up and ask any questions or email me. So the information is on the screen. I'm an OSHA authorized trainer for both industries, construction and general industries. So we also do the 10 and 30-hour classes through UCLA, UCI, the Southern Education Research Center, and you can bring us on board to your particular workplace. So since 2011, I opened my consulting, and I am so happy to say that my clients, which by the way, they're handpicked. I love people who always want to truly do the right thing for their employees. After all, human beings are the greatest resource a company has. And today, when we talk about defensive driving, we're talking about a topic that causes death at work. Why? Because we have a fleet, we have vehicles. People get in our work vehicles to go and do field surveys or to get the crew to the construction site, or because you have to deliver things, or because you actually have a company that delivers furniture. Whatever you're doing, and you have to put workers behind the wheel, this is a topic of the utmost importance. So my learning objectives today are, and we always want to have learning objectives because it really puts the whole hour into context. What is it that we're trying to achieve? And that's something that you need to do also in your training sessions. Put them in context by telling the workers what you're going to tell them that day. Number one, I want to make sure we mention 2 different ways to update your defensive driving course, because many of you have had the same driving course online, software-based, or one-page handout for the past 5-10 years. I want you to bring it up to date, and I'm going to give you today at least 2 ways to really spruce it up and make it meaningful to your organization. Next is describing at least 3 different defensive driving tactics and practices that are recommended by the National Safety Council and other organizations that should be included in your organization's training sessions. Next, listing at least 3 reasons why collisions are happening on the road and how to improve your incident rate. So basically, if we can lower those numbers, because many of you, that's what's driving your experience modification up, all of these collisions, there's no need. All of these things are 100% preventable. And I'm going to touch today on one of those issues that most of your drivers tell you, there's nothing I can do. It just happens. It's an accident. And those are your rear-ending collisions. There are some things that through training and education and awareness, we can actually lower those numbers, especially those rear-ending collisions. Find resources for defensive driving courses. I do want to give you resources, good stuff, and links for you to go and visit, and maybe put some of your drivers through some of these very, very reliable courses out there, especially the ones by the National Safety Council. I really like those. So, okay, let's get started. Oprah Winfrey started a campaign for safe driving, and she put out a lot of different videos and awareness posters and YouTube and through CNN. In this interview, these parents were interviewed about their child who was coming from school riding her bike and was hit by a 5,000-pound SUV. And the police said that the driver had recently finished a phone call at the time of the accident. The driver said, "I am so sorry. I didn't see her." So Shelly, the mom, says, "I felt badly for the driver because I thought, oh, she's unconscious, she's going to be okay. And then it was actually her daughter whose clothes were torn off and she was flown to a children's hospital, etc. She passed away." And the actual punishment for distracted driving in Colorado was, I think, 300 hours of community service plus 150 hours of some other thing, but it was just very minimal. And this couple is really, or in 2010, was working to really change the laws in Colorado. In California, the actual laws for distracted driving are much more strict. They're harsher, right? Let's watch this just because it really makes the point here. I really like this video by the National Safety Council as well. Okay, let me do this new share and I'm going to show you guys.
We fussed at me. Mom put the phone down. I was like, Cameron, I've been driving 30 years. I got this. What a great role model was I being for her with distracted driving.
Alba, we don't see the video.
She was distracted by her phone from what they told us.
Oh, we don't see the video. We don't see the video. We just see the preview, the screen, the computer screen. Preview.
Okay, hold on.
Put the phone down. I was like, Cameron, I've been driving 30 years. I got this. What a great role model was I being for her with distracted driving.
Are we better now?
No. Can you close down everything? Just minimalize everything and just have the video up.
Okay, if we can't see the video, I'm just going to. Let's see. Let me see. Can you guys see the screen in the middle?
It's loading right now. It's all white.
Hmm.
Yeah, we don't see anything right now.
Okay, well, I'm gonna just stop sharing that screen and I'm just gonna tell you about it. But what this is a young girl. She was 26 days away from her 18th birthday and 3 months away from her graduation, and distracted driving took her life. So a lot of these campaigns, a lot of these resources are super important for us just to make sure that your programs for defensive driving are really, really making an impact. These videos can help. So at the end of the presentation, I'm going to make sure I'll show you the actual resources for these videos because they do have an impact. They do create that aha moment. I remember when I first saw this video, and if you can see, now you can see my presentation, right? You see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yes.
Well, look at that picture up on top of how her car ended up in that collision. That's because she basically did not stop timely and her car were under an 18-wheeler. And she died in February 22nd of 2018. So this is because of the phone. So, you know, even hands-free is still distracting. And so we get into the topic of what is defensive driving. And defensive driving is driving to save lives, time and money in spite of conditions around you and the actions of others. So that's the description or the definition the National Safety Council gives us. But today's numbers tells us that every 7 seconds, someone is injured in a car crash. So injuries, the injuries are, I think, 500,000 a year. People get injured on the road. And every 15 minutes, someone is killed. So as we sit here today, we're going to have deaths on the road because of some deadly practices from the drivers behind the wheel. Many of the crashes occur during the workday or the daily commute. So that's why vehicle collisions are one of the top 3 most common ways of dying while on the job here in California. Employers always have to absorb costs associated with these crashes. You guys end up paying for that because whenever there's a vehicle collision behind the wheel from one of your employees, it all goes under your workers' compensation insurance and it drives your experience modification rate up. More vehicle crashes are the #1 cause of workplace death in California. So imagine that. It's always either first or second, but people are dying. And so we need to bring awareness. We need to bring specific techniques, tactics, things that impact people. Because I was recently asked to do an actual series for defensive driving. And I was thinking, how can we get to impact people? And always, when you go through the OSHA Training Institute, the first thing that tell you for safety It's not about repeating, okay, put on your personal protective equipment, or for driving, put on your seatbelt, or the 5 techniques for driving starts with scanning your environment, or prepare to drive, here's your checklist for you to check your vehicle. It becomes boring. It becomes something that people are expecting to hear or they've heard in the past, and they get tired of it and they don't listen anymore. So we have to go back to that question of what's in it for me. So if I'm listening to you telling me that we need to improve our numbers, and we're having this many vehicle collisions that are driving our numbers up, what's in it for me? So even if you repeat 20,000 times, 5 different techniques for defensive driving, do I really want to pay attention or not? I want to be a good driver. I'm pretty much a fairly safe driver. So why do I need to listen to you? And the way we want to do it, and so here it is, the first tip I'm going to give you is make it so that people can picture themselves in it. So bring your own statistics to the table. So here you give them the numbers of what the nation's numbers are all about. Every 7 seconds, someone's injured in a car crash. Okay, but this makes more of an impact. For example, for this particular client of mine, I asked for their numbers for the last year. And what did we get? Okay, so in the last 12 months, we had 9 vehicle collisions. So that's a lot of collisions, right? And these were incidents involving drivers and work vehicles, our vehicles. And when you're talking about this, do it when you're outside in the yard by the trucks, the vehicles that you're using for work. And talk to them about, okay, we had 9 collisions in 12 months. We need to get this underhand because although we had this many injuries, or 2 of those, went to the hospital, or 1 of those resulted in this, you talk about what happened, you got to tell them the numbers. 5 of these 9 collisions, our employee was declared to be at fault. That's 5 of them where our employee is not being the good driver. So that right there, in the group, everybody's like looking at each other like, wow. You're not mentioning names, but you're telling them your numbers. So you see the difference between showing statistics that are nationwide statistics versus these are my numbers. These are our numbers. This is what's happening here. Next, 2 of them, our employee was not at fault. 2 were not determined. So it was difficult to say if it was our driver who's unsafe. So actually, we could put those 2 that are not determined, 2 or 5. So it's 7 of them, right? And then next says 7 of these 9 incidents occurred while parking, backing up, or moving your work truck slowly. So now we have a lot of collisions with objects while parking, backing up, or moving our work truck during these moments of just moving slowly, parking, arriving to the work site. And only one of those 9 collisions occurred at an intersection, right? And for all of these, you're doing a beautiful analysis, an incident report where you are getting to the root causes, right? What's happening here? And a lot of the times what you're going to see that this shows is that your training, your defensive driving training is not efficient. So how can we make it efficient? That's what we're getting to today. Bring it to their attention to your numbers. This is what's happening here. This is our company. It means a lot more, right? And that's part of what our online courses are missing. So if you are forced to doing software-based training, defensive driving software-based, add a page with your numbers just like this, and just send it to the actual drivers who you are assigning the software training to, and give them your numbers so that it means a lot more as they're watching or going through the online training. Do you see now, as you look at these numbers, you immediately know that one of the things that we're missing for this company is an actual spotting traffic control type of program where your drivers have more help while they have to park, when they park their trucks. Why? Because that's where the incidents are coming from. They're ramming into, structures, other cars, posts, walls. We need spotters. Right? So we got to the root cause. Now we are doing awareness training, effective training, opening up our eyes. And after that, we're also adding this extra step to our defensive driving, which is, spotting. And how are we going to do that? And what hand signals are we going to use? And where are the blind spots in your work vehicle? Every work vehicle has different blind spots. It really depends on the actual make, model, and bulkiness of your loads. Okay, cool. So now we're talking about, this is what's going to update my defensive driving program by looking at my numbers, by looking at what's happening to me, to my company, so that my workers, okay, so it just becomes personal. It becomes something that they want to change as a team, because we're not mentioning any names. So your defensive driving training program, because I also promised to give you this, needs to include the following. And this is interesting. We don't have a OSHA regulation that tells you what your defensive driving training program needs to include. So what I present to you today is derived from the courses I have taken. Normally, there's a state driver here in California, state driver online free course. It is directed to state vehicle drivers, but it's a very good course. And they do include a lot of what I'm going to present to you today. A review of your own incidents. Well, I added that because I think that's what personalizes and customizes your defensive driving training program. It really hits a chord with your employees. It helps for them to pay attention. Next, discussion of why it's important to get the numbers under control, like what we said right now. Hey, we're hitting structures, walls, posts, and other vehicles when we park. So once you've reviewed your own incidents, now why is it important to get the numbers under control? And it's for two different reasons. When these numbers, vehicle collisions, are up, our workers' compensation rates go up. There's less money to pay for employees, so we won't have the spotters that you need. So we won't be able to correct this problem. So we talk to employees in a way that it is just not because of the company wanting to get a handle on these numbers because they're spending too much. It's actually because we want you to stay working for us. We want to give you a job. We want to keep you, your valued worker, and less incidents means more resources, more workers to help you out, better teams, better crews, right? Less stress, less injuries. Awesome. A system to remove. So this discussion has to be there in your defensive driving training program. These two first bullet points needs to be there because it really drives it home. Next, a system to remove unsafe drivers from the task. So there's the DMV's pool notice program where you get notified. You have to tell the employees that are your drivers that you will get a notice whenever they are pulled over, or if they were given a ticket. You always get notices. A list of tailored to your needs defensive driver techniques and practices, which we're going to get into. You have to tailor it to their needs. In the case of the company that I was just talking about, I already saw that one of their needs is to do spotting, right? To spot our drivers. We need to help them when they get to the job sites with their parking and with their backing up. So now that list of defensive driver techniques includes spotting when parking, right? Other defensive driver courses will not include it, but you will, because that's what's happening to you. Examples, graphics, discussions to engage your drivers, like what we're doing today, a video, pictures, etc. Let them talk too, right? And then as you go through your defensive driving program, you want to, let's say you don't have time to do a full hour of defensive driving. Well, do 5 minutes for a week. And this is defensive driving week, and document it. And 5 minutes, you talk about preparing to drive, preparing your vehicle for operation, and you get out your checklist and you say, okay, guys, we all have a checklist where we go through whether or not your vehicle has had maintenance, whether or not your vehicle's in top shape, or anything visually that you can see that day, right? Mirrors on the outside, tires, tire pressure, you open the hood, whatever you need to look at in the outside, right? Lights, that everything is well maintained. And then on preparing to drive, you also have to do the inside your vehicle, right? What types of adjustments? Adjusting your mirror, setting your directions, your GPS, where are you going to go to prior to actually turning on the engine and driving. The inside also includes the clutter and the trash that we leave, which hopefully is not your case, but I've seen trucks where you have water bottles, tools that are loose, and in the moment of a collision, the moment you put those brakes, those screwdrivers or bottles of water will go under the pedal and cause a greater or more just a worse collision type of thing. So all of those things are number one. 5 minutes of discussion with your crew. Next, avoiding distractions in your motor vehicle. And then you get into distracted driving and, cell phone use, GPS, controls, radio. eating, drinking coffee, etc. It's important to discuss this because these are things that your workers are doing, and especially if you see them in the morning approaching their work vehicle with a cup of coffee, headphones, some other things, tools, and they can barely get to their truck. That's not a good sign. That means they're having, their coffee while they're driving, their sandwich, and they're also, I don't know why they have headphones around their head. So hopefully they will not be driving with those on. Talk to them about that. Also, when you finish this 5-minute, and you can see, identifying 5 potential accident situations, another 5 minutes on another day, avoiding aggressive behavior and aggressive drivers, and what to do and what not to do. And I will show you the actual trainer guide I've developed for my clients. All right. So, but these are things that your defensive driving program must include. Let me see if I can actually show it to you today. For example, on the 5 defensive driving techniques and practices that you need to tailor to your needs, we start with, for example, number 1, getting a good visual. So when you talk about defensive driver techniques or tactics, let's talk about good visual. Number 1, check for obstructions, obstructed view, distractions, mirrors maladjusted, dirty windshields. All of that is in your checklist when you get to work and you're going to get behind the wheel. All of that. Check for obstructions, blind spots. Have your coworker walk around your vehicle to see where your blind spots are at. What can you see? What can you not see? Constantly scan your environment. What does that mean? The National Safety Council says that it is recommended that you have a nice 15-second rule, kind of a looking ahead, where you see the road, you can see the cars, you can see your environment, and you're scanning that constantly. Through your mirrors, you scan the back of your car, whatever is behind you, and through looking ahead and just constantly scanning. And when you're constantly scanning, you get a good visual, you get a good feel for what's around, right? So these are the things you get to discuss with your guys. Managing the space around, and then we get into speed and safety cushion and the 3 to 5 second rule, right? When you want to say whether or not I'm tailgating, well, okay, the vehicle in front of me passes a landmark and I count 3 seconds, right? 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, and now I hit that landmark. That's a good 3-second following rule. And it also depends on conditions, right? Because if it's raining, which has been raining a lot here in California lately, you got to add another second or 2. And how to manage tailgaters. Oh, that's a good one, because I have companies or clients that tell me that one of the greatest vehicle collision numbers is because of rear-ending collisions. And most of the times when they look at the incident investigation report, you see that supervisor or the person who filled out the report says that there was nothing they can do. It's a tailgater, couldn't switch lanes, couldn't do anything about it. There are some things that you can do. So let's go through them real quickly. Number 1 is trying to change lanes as soon as possible, as soon as the other lane opens up. Number 2 is not putting your brakes, because when you put your brakes, that could be interpreted by the tailgater as an aggressive behavior, right? So what can you do? Just diminish your speed by taking your foot off the accelerator. And that, slows you down even more so, and the tailgater kind of gets even more frustrated and goes away. But if the person doesn't go away, really, truly, what you have left is just moving away, even getting off of the freeway or the road, the main road that you're on, for which you continue to have that tailgater. Those are some of the driving techniques. That's all you have, because that person is tailgating you. You've got to get out of there, or you're going to be involved in a rear end collision. But a lot of us, what we do is we put those brakes on, man. And what it does, it just really gets that person mad. And it is counted as one of those aggressive behaviors by the driver, by our driver. And we do not want that. Managing the speed, stopping distance factor. So I have a whole guide on these, just the defensive driver tactics and practices, because we do need to discuss them during our defensive driving training program. I interviewed an expert because I wanted to make sure that I knew a little bit about the 2 most important adjustments inside my car. I always, when we do these talks, I want to give you something that you can take with you that maybe you haven't heard before, or you've heard before, but it's a good reminder. So I talked to Dr. J.C. Vazquez, and he is trauma qualified, and he has had 2 different clinics, and the latest one was a specialty clinic only for workers' compensation, and he only treated people with post and pre-surgical cases, and all because of on-the-job injuries, a lot of vehicle collisions, right? So one of the things that I talked to him about is, if you could tell me what are the two most important adjustments that I can do while I am inside my car. So after I did my pre-check, I went through my checklist, check, and I sit inside the car and I'm ready to drive. What are the two most important adjustments you think I could make? And the first thing, because I recorded the interview with him, the first thing he said is your seatbelt, of course. And he talked extensively about not having that seatbelt around your neck, but truly just right by the clavicle and the middle of your chest, because of the types of injuries that come from having that seatbelt across your neck or too high up, where is the neck area versus the clavicle. So that's number one. And the second one he mentioned was the headrest. And I thought that was truly, truly important, because I never really adjusted my headrest till I knew about this. And why? And he talked about whiplash injuries and what happens to us. So let's see what he said. Let me see if I can get his interview here. Okay. If you can't hear it, don't worry. What's important is that you, if you can't see it, don't worry. What's important is that you hear it. You hear what he's saying. So it's minute 11. Let me see what the question there. You should be hearing.
5'9", and the headrest is below you. Whenever we are struck from behind, that's the part I'm emphasizing at this time, there is something called a ramping effect. And that means that inside of our car seats, there's springs, and those springs compress when the injury occurs, when you're being hit from behind, and then they release forward. The spring pushes your mid back forward and throws your head first up.
Oh, that makes sense. So it goes like this.
It goes up first, then forward, then back. So that if your headrest is too low, it'll wonderfully act as a fulcrum to rip apart all the ligaments in your neck.
Did you hear that? So I wanted to really just kind of pause and think about how important it is to really position your headrest appropriately. And one of the things that he talks about is the actual distance between your head and the headrest, which shouldn't be more than 2 inches. So for those of you that like to drive with your the back of your seat really away from you, is not good, because it only worsens those whiplash injuries. And also the actual positioning shouldn't be more than 1.5 inches above your head, right? And never really too low behind your head, because that will allow to stop that whiplash injury. I don't know if you guys have heard of the actual newer technology. There's some newer technology out there in newer cars. Of course, we always have it in newer cars. And it is called the actual active headrest system. Let's see. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it?
Now we see the video.
Good active front
You see the video?
headrests reduce whiplash injuries in the unfortunate event of a rear-end collision. The active front headrest system activates when the occupant's lower back presses against the backrest, moving the headrest diagonally upwards. This means your head is better supported and you're less likely to suffer a painful injury.
Tell me, please, raise your hand if you had heard before of the active headrest system. See how many people raise their hands. Had you heard of this newer technology in cars? So this is one of the things that it would be very good. You hadn't heard of this. Well, this is really cool, right? Because I don't know if you've ever had friends, co-workers who get in a rear end type of vehicle collision, and then they go to the doctor, they end up in the emergency room, and now they have torn ligaments, or they have to wear those collars, right? To kind of just keep the entire structure still for so many days. And then you do have treatment, physical therapy, chiropractic bills, and then etc. Right? And so it is really surprising how no one had talked to me before about adjusting my headrest and how important it is to really avoid injury. Right? So I like for you guys that are contributing, saying, I never heard of this, or yes, I heard of it before, but this is something that we need to start adding to our defensive driving. And in those checklists, when we go prepare to drive, adjusting your mirrors, adjusting your headrest, especially if these vehicles are being driven by different drivers, by different employees. All right, so let's keep going. Another portion of that interview that I wanted to hit is, let's see. I wanted to show you, and if you don't see the video or anything, it's fine. I just want to make sure you guys hear a little bit more about it.
Oh, wow. So if I get you correctly, if I have it too low right here,
A little bit more.
really throwing my head back and forth and rupturing those ligaments right here.
Yes, and look, it's important to note, the sweet spot for having a headrest is about, and I'll tell you, there's different opinions on it, but at the very top of your head, like you stated, Alba, you would go maximum 1 inch below that. But to me, ideally, you should go 1 inch to 2 inches above your head. If you go above your head, what happens is, God forbid, if you're rear-ended, as your head goes up first, then what it does is it does not act as a fulcrum, but it actually protects your head.
I understand.
That's wonderful. So now I'm going to forward to another part of the question for this interview, which is what happens to my neck when I get rear-ended? And the reason why I want to emphasize this is because the types of injuries we get are a little bit of that, what's in it for me. Remember, I told you at the beginning of today's classes, when we want our employees, our workers, our drivers to really pay attention, we need to give them something about what's in it for you. And I think this really makes it, right? When you can give them a snippet of, hey, there's newer technology. We could actually get better headrests, and you bring it to management, and the president of the company starts looking into purchasing those types of technology. This is great stuff, right? But not just that, but the fact that just you're manually adjusting your headrest will make a difference in the types of injuries that you could suffer. So let me take you to that portion of the interview. There we go.
Many times from a car accident, when you have significant injury, and what I mean by significant injury, that means where you actually have some mild traumatic brain injury signs, and you have grade 2 or 3 ligament tearing, which means it's a partial tear or a complete tear, which is an avulsion, or you have a herniation that is significant, causing pressure on the spinal cord. If you have things like this, Alba, the average time that these things take to recover is approximately, if I remember correctly in the medical research, is 6.2 years.
Wow, that's a long time. And I know you mentioned some technical words there, but the word tearing, ligaments that tear, just kind of scares me. I don't ever want that for me, my family members, certainly not. And can they heal? Can those tears be healed?
Well, once again, that's a complex question, and it has to be unwrapped. First of all, there's 3 types of tearing that occurs in ligaments, whether they're in your neck or in your elbow, it doesn't matter. But the first one is just a grade 1, and that's the nicest one, the most gentle. That's just a stretching. And of course, most of those do not have lasting effect. The second is a grade 2, it's a partial tear. It's as if you had a rope and it tore down the middle, but not all the way through. And those take time to heal, anywhere between 2 months to 2 years, but they don't completely heal. And I mean heal in parentheses, because after puberty, the body no longer prepares the healing process the same way. It has collagen, but it doesn't have elastin, which provides the elastic effect of the ligament. After puberty, it does not do that anymore. And that's why all of us know that when we're younger, if you get hurt, you're playing soccer and you twist your ankle or whatever, it's no big deal. It heals with collagen and elastin and comes back to full strength. But if you're a weekend athlete, you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever it is, and you hurt that ankle the same way, it'll never be quite the same. Why? Because it'll heal with collagen, no elastin. And
I
it
think
will
it's the
be
same for
about
our-
70% of what it was.
Wow, so it's the same for the ligaments in our necks. Oh
Yes.
my, God. Doctor, it's been so,
Okay, so I want to share that with you because I think that it really matters when we hear it from an expert, when we hear from someone who has treated so many of these types of injuries. All right, let me stop that interview and continue with what I have for you. Any questions up until now? Guys, okay? So I really, really liked hearing about not just the seatbelt, but the ramping effect, you know, how adjusting your headrest, the positioning is so important to avoid greater type of injury to your ligaments in your neck. And the shaking of the head, because there's a part of that interview that also talks about how when your head it's shaken, how your brain really gets injured at times. And another one of the very interesting things is that injury can be caused when the vehicle who hits you is at 2.49 miles per hour of speed. And I was flabbergasted because I thought, and many of us think that injury occurs whenever there's visual damage to the car, because insurances have taught us that, right? That if there's bumper damage, then there could be some issue with your health. It's not true. That we're talking about 5,000-pound SUV that hits you from behind at 2.49 miles per hour. It already has the potential for injury to your neck. These are things that your workers want to hear. These are things that your worker will go, oh my gosh, that's barely a car moving, but it makes sense. It's got all this inertia. It's got all of this weight that is going to hit me from behind. And then the whiplash movement of my neck and how many of those ligaments will be torn, and the degree of the tear and how that will affect you, either some not very lasting effects to, you know, photophobia, where you can't stand the lights for many years, or where you can't heal and the neck pain is there for 6-point-something years that he mentioned. So the occupant's age and health and physical status also matters. And he talks about this, how your risk is less when you keep yourself in better condition than if you don't. And then we talked about recovery time. So I thought that was important to bring because you want to discuss these things. It matters to your workers to know these things. And then we talk about the legal consequences as well, because little did you know that the $20 fine for distracted driving here in California is no longer the thing. I believe for the first ticket that you get, if they catch you, you know, texting or even grabbing your phone while driving. So this doesn't even mean that you injured someone or that you were in any vehicle collision, but if they see you grab any of your smart devices, it went up to $161 on the first violation, right? And that's after, was it April 2021? So this is something that changed in 2021. Don't put it away. Phones, smart devices. A good practice is to leave them in the back of your car, to leave them away from you so that you're not tempted to grab it, especially when you have things that are pending that are urgent, that you know someone's going to call you or try and reach you. Just put it away. There are legal consequences as well. So we have to talk about, you know, just penalties like the ones that I just discussed, but actual DUI, vehicular manslaughter, whenever someone is convicted of this charge, they face prison sentence of 10 years to life. And this is when there's drugs or alcohol involved, right? Additionally, you'll be fined up to 10 grand and your driver's license is suspended for 4 years. But if you go to jail for 10, I don't think you will need that. The penalties for driving under the influence and causing an accident that results in death are extremely harsh in California. And this is when it's a felony, right? It's less when it's a misdemeanor. And that is usually whenever there's a death while you were texting, there's no drugs or alcohol involved, but maybe texting or taking a phone call, etc. And they can get your phone records. So there's jail time involved from 1 year to more, and penalties and money penalties as well. But discussing these things and bringing them to the table is also important, especially if in your numbers, when we talked about earlier in my slide where I said, show the numbers for your company. How many vehicle collisions? Which of those are your most common one? If it has to do with distracted driving, because some of your drivers, you know, have GPSs where they have to get to different sites, and some of those incidents are related to that. Get to that data. And many times they can't, our drivers, our employees can't hide this information anymore because we have cameras. So another good tip for you guys is to get cameras to catch everything that really went on during that vehicle collision. Unfortunately, I don't have any systems to recommend, but I know several of my clients do have camera systems installed in the work vehicles or work trucks so that whenever there's a collision, they know exactly what happened. Talk about the most frequent type. So if the most frequent type of incident in your company is the rear end collision, talk about these issues like what I just went over. What is the rear end collision type for your company? And even if there is no actual damage to your truck, discuss how that movement of when you're rear-ended at 2.49 miles per hour of speed already has the potential for injury to you, the employee. How does it affect you? How does it affect your spine? How does it affect your health, right? And that's why we talk to an expert. And in regards to defensive driving tactics, it really summarizes and kind of wraps up if we teach our employees to understand the hazard, meaning if you're getting behind the wheel and they have coffee and food, you have to understand those are the hazards. You're putting yourself at risk. Or they're the driving conditions. There's a lot of rain during this rainy season. There's fog in the morning, there's dew, or it's the first rain, so you have a lot of that black asphalt, whatever it is, understanding the hazard, because by pinpointing the hazard, they are able to understand the defense. Driving, instead of with that 3-second rule following distance, they up it to 5 seconds, right? Acting accordingly, timely and correctly. So we give them these tools, basically. More on those specific examples. This line in front of you is another example of the specific defense driving techniques that I have for you. For example, for the rear end vehicle collisions discussion that you want to have, you may want to employ the next techniques and discuss them, such as scan your environment. So you're scanning your environment, you know who's behind you. Are they tailgating you? You're not going to know that unless you are constantly scanning your environment, looking forward, that 15 to 20-second rule where you can see everything ahead of you and checking your mirrors to see what and who's behind you. Then, employing that 3-second following distance or a little bit more, depending on the conditions of the day, if it's raining, etc. Next, switching lanes as soon as possible to avoid tailgaters, or getting out of the road to completely leave that tailgating person on the road behind, away from you. Do not engage in aggressive behavior with tailgaters, such as slamming on the brakes or gesturing, right? Because those are things that will take it to the next level. And then you get into violent behaviors from other drivers, etc. Now, in regards to resources, we have great resources for you this time. And one of the things is, remember that motor vehicle collisions are the leading cause of death in the workplace. So depending on what you have, the National Safety Council offers defensive driving online courses. They offer the driving classroom courses for an authorized NSC authorized instructor. So if you're looking to have an in-house defensive driving program, first look into putting a very nicely laid out written fleet defensive driving policy, where you have a point system, for example, where you will remove drivers that are accumulating certain points for driving unsafely, or because you receive a notice from the DMV through the pull notice program, and you get to see that they got a ticket for speeding while or during the weekend with their family, etc. All of that matters. So first, have something in writing, a system to actually pick good drivers to be behind the wheel, remove unsafe drivers, then assign courses to them. Have them be certified through one of these courses. For example, there's the defensive driving course, professional truck and van drivers. So if you have a lot of vans, have them take that course. If you have defensive driving courses, such as emergency vehicle operators, that's the kind of course that you want them to take, because they are driving emergency vehicles. Next, work zone safety training, temporary traffic control for those of you that are having issues where, construction zones and backing up and parking. Defensive driving for mature drivers, and defensive driving courses, young adults, because sometimes you're hiring young adults, put them behind the wheel. Not very recommended. Nevertheless, during the summer, I do see a lot of my clients and companies hiring temporarily a lot of these youngsters who need a summer job. So put them through this before you put them behind the wheel. All right, so now I'm going to show you the trainer guide that I said that I give to all of my clients. And they use this as a way to continue to do at least once a year their defensive driving course for those that they put behind the wheel. And let me show it to you. My guide, can everybody see my Word document? Okay, let me start it. So you put your logo, and then this is the trainer's guide. What does that mean? It's the supervisor who's assigned to be the defensive driving program leader, right? So what I put in my guides is, first of all, the topic name, and then the frequency of training that OSHA requires you to do this training for your employees. And truly, with driving, is the moment you're going to assign anybody to a company vehicle, you must train them and ensure that they receive defensive driving training before they start driving your company vehicles. And of course, the job classification, all employees assigned to drive a company vehicle, and additional recommendations. I always put recommendations for training. So number one, this is an awareness. You can tweak it to your needs. Number two, provide online training through an actual well-renowned source, such as the National Safety Council. Get all your drivers to have an NSC certificate, right? And then annually revisit this topic using these training guides. So I give you, step by step what to do to have a defensive driving program that is sturdy and that is good for your company. And then reassign the online national safety course to drivers who show deficiencies when driving or when they have been in a collision or near miss. It is important that any type of incidents, and when you have a good, sturdy safety program at your company, and I'm not talking just defensive driving, but you have a good injury and illness prevention program, and you have an actual monthly discussion training, and you have a good safety program going on at your company, but you're still seeing incidents and your numbers are not going down. The reason may lay in how you are following up with your incident investigation reports. Your incident investigation reports should throw light on those root causes and the actual courses of action that need to be taken after the incident occurred. So you have to have a list of tasks, short-term and long-term. And if your numbers are not coming down, especially with vehicle collisions, are because we are not following through with those recommendations. So if the supervisor told you that the maintenance of your vehicles is lacking, but then nobody followed through till that was corrected, then that's why your numbers are not going down. And it has nothing to do with how good your supervisors are doing their job at training their crews, or the online software program that you're using to train your employees, or your injury and illness prevention program, or the consultant that you hired 2 years ago to put together all these written programs. It has nothing to do with that. If you haven't seen your numbers go down, a lot of the times it has to do with the analysis after your incidents happen. Basically, we're not learning from our own mistakes. All right, so the duration of this guide is about 25 minutes. Please, we can do 25 minutes. We can do 5 minutes each day, and then you're done, right? There's some instructions to the training. Verify that you have a complete training roster. Ensure workers' names are legible. That's a problem. When OSHA gets to your doorstep and they want to see training records and no one can understand who was present at that training, it's bad news, because it says if that worker was not present. So you get an introduction, which is up to date in regards to some of these statistics. And then remember to make it your own. After today's 1-hour webinar, you know that it is important to bring your numbers to the table and say, this is what's happening to us. Our number one vehicle collision has to do with rear-ending type of incidents, or our number one vehicle collision type of incident has to do with parking or backing up. And then you know what you need to work on, right? Then make sure you have checklists so that you teach people how to prepare to drive, prepare your vehicle for operation. And that's what I was talking to you about. Outside your vehicle, inside your vehicle, avoiding distractions, then making sure that you talk about transportation incidents are the number one cause of death for workers in California. And it goes into, what are the distractions? What is distracted driving? Cell phone, GPS, vehicle controls, alcohol and drugs, children and passengers, right? Well, if you are a school bus driver, it would be the children. If you are driving your crew, it would be your passengers. Many times on Monday, they want to show you all the pictures from the quinceañera party that they had. music, eating, smoking, daydreaming. So you get to really discuss these things. I have a ton of, and you don't have to read them. Don't make these trainings boring. You, supervisor, as you prepare to give these talks, you study it before going in front of your crew, and then you pick 2 or 3 and you ask them to read and give their input. Give examples. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? Or have you ever been to the chiropractor because of a whiplash injury, right? And then we get into the defensive drivers tactics and practice, and you can pick 1 or 2 and then just kind of highlight those that you've already covered, and next day you cover another one, etc., till you finish the guide and you've done defensive driving once a year. And remember, this is after you've already had your drivers take that National Safety Council course, for example, for van drivers, right? Signaling your intentions, making turns safely, identifying potential accident and collision situations, which are intersections, failure to check before entering, or seeing that there's a distracted driver. You're not the distracted driver, but you're dealing with distracted drivers. Why? Because you're trying to make eye contact and the person is texting. So identifying potential accident situations, let them pass, even if it was your turn, just avoid the incident. And then talking about rear end, inability to keep a safe distance. How do we deal with those? And we talked about that specific tactics, because remember, if we summarize it, is first, recognize the hazard. Second, make sure that you give them the tools to actually act defensively. How do they defend themselves when they have recognized a hazard? And third, tell them how to act correctly and timely, right? Backing up and traffic. All of those are potential incident, accident, collisions. And then aggressive driving and aggressive behavior, how to deal with them. You know, it says, for example, aggressive drivers never engage. Defensive drivers never engage in aggressive behaviors. Listed below are behaviors considered aggressive, and one speeding up when someone tries to pass you, tailgating, weaving in and out of traffic. It's also an aggressive behavior, and that is done a lot by, a lot of drivers. I'm just going to say those that are in a hurry, and it's the me mentality. I got to get there before anyone else. Flashing your headlights at vehicles, overusing your horn, making obscene gestures, yelling out, or at people, right? Remember, it's important to arrive alive and safe. That they're yelling, that they're aggressive drivers. Talk about not taking it personal. It's just remember, they're the ones that have the problem. So some tactics here to discuss, and then group exercises. So in my guide, I put some examples of what you could have or you're dealing while behind the wheel, and how to solve them. And everybody talks, or everybody responds, fills that out, and turns it in. So now you have a little bit of an idea whether or not your training was effective, because it's important that if you involve your workers, if they talk to you, you just talk, and do not involve them, the actual training session may not be effective. Remember, adults do better by listening, doing, right? And also visualizing. So we need to hear, see, and do. Touch, kinesthetically, we need to actually do the group exercise by discussing with our friends and filling out this form, co-workers, and filling out this exercise where we get an idea of whether or not this defensive driving session had any impact or not. And you can make it your own, put your own types of incidents, because you've already analyzed that, especially if you're in charge of doing this type of training for your company. Guys, it's been a pleasure. I really thank you for your time, and I hope to see you next month. I really hope to have given you something new, something to take with you. I hope the headrest thing was important. Some of the things that opened my eyes when interviewing the expert was 2.49 miles per hour is enough speed for you to get injured during a rear end collision. It's important to discuss these things. It's important to adjust your headrest, not just your seatbelt, right? And bring these things to the table, make it lively, stay safe, and I'll see you in a month.
Thank you so much, Alba. Thanks, everyone. Let us know if you want certificates, but we'll see you next month.
Thank you, Lindsay. And I'll see you guys for that aerosol transmissible disease training next month. Don't forget to enroll those people that have some safety responsibilities. Thank you, Lindsay.
Okay, take care. Have a good weekend.
Bye.